concept also. We said that array of functions, we can have array of functions. Array of functions. So see what happens is, generally I am creating here a function, some f1, and here we are declaring so some actions. Actions is an array. Actions is an array. In that actions array, we have at the first index, we have a function. That means we configured a function at the actions. This function contains some functionality like document.write. It says success. And comma, we have another function. We have document.write. So invalid. So we have success, we have invalid. Now generally the functions configured here, you see, so we have success function, so we have invalid function. They don't have a name, but they are in a memory reference name. That means actions of 0, it contains first function. Actions of 1, it contains second function. So I can create a destructing technique, success, comma, failure. So is equal to actions. This is array destructing. Already we learned destructing. Now we will configure here where password is equal to prompt. So enter password. We defined enter password. If password is equal to some what we are expecting, John 1, 2, 3, then we need to call the success function. So else we need to call the failure function. That's how we define. That means we keep set of functions and store in the memory, and we access and execute them according to the situation and requirement. Later in parameters also I will show you. Success and failure are not function names. They are the memory references where those functions are stored. That means anonymous functions is to keep all the functionality and access the functionality which is required according to the situation. So store in the references and use them. This mechanism is callback mechanism. Callback, some more points are there, I will tell you. Some more points are there, I will show you those. That means this mechanism, in this mechanism, we need functions without any name required for them. We keep all of them in the memory and access them according to situation. Now, when I run this, it will ask the name. So it will ask the name. We have to call the function. So call the function f1, and it will ask here enter password. We are entering some password. So John 1, 2, 3. And it should execute the success. If we are entering wrong password, then it should execute invalid. It executes according to the situation and it returns according to the situation. That is the intention. That is the intention of function. So the function, so technically the function with the callback mechanism. So we keep all of them in the memory and access according to requirement. This is what anonymous is. Why we need anonymous functions? Why to configure? Because we don't want to allocate directly a name for the functions. We will load them only when they are necessary, and we will execute and return them whenever they are required. For that, we need functions without names, actually. That is what actually anonymous function is. Right. So this is one concept, how a function can be anonymous. That means without name. Next important is function parameters. Function parameters. Already I told you here the formal parameter and optional, that is the actual parameter. See, generally function can be parameterized or parameterless. Parameterized or parameterless. Parameterized. If anyone asks like why we need parameters, why a function require parameters, what is the necessity of parameters? So that means function requires parameters to modify the functionality. If there are no parameters, a function will perform certain functionality. The parameters are required to modify the functionality. A parameter is required to modify the functionality. So don't say why we need parameter means to pass a value. That is school kids answer. This answer you can expect from many people who know little bit JavaScript from internet. So if you ask what is the purpose of parameters, they will say, so to pass parameters. We asked why we need parameters. Because he likes passing parameters, that's the reason he have parameters. Huh? So that is silly things, a silly point that generally people tell. But technically, function requires a parameter to modify its functionality actually. Let's prove that point to understand that. So for example, we have a function here. So we have a function, print numbers. Print numbers is a function. And here we are writing a for. So where I is equal to 1, I less than or equal to 10, I plus plus, like this. Now document dot write. So I br. Now when I call this function, when I call this print numbers function, so print numbers function I am calling, how many numbers it will print? How many numbers it will print? So what do you say? How many numbers it will print? That means when I call this function, then what happens is it will print all the 10 numbers here. It will print all the 10 numbers, 1 to 10. I will call this print numbers one more time. Now how many it will print? Every time it will print 1 to 10 only. Every time it will print same 1 to 10 only. That means now can I use this function to print 50 numbers? Can I use this to 15, change this to 10? You cannot change that every time. That is wrong. Then how you can design a function so that it can print different according to requirement? Then very simple. So we will define a parameter. So n, we define a parameter n, or we say count, we define a parameter count. That means this count, this count will be used less than or equal to count. Less than or equal to count. That means now the function is designed in such a way that it can change the functionality. Now, whenever, remember, the parameters passed in function signature, are known as what parameters? Formal parameters. Are known as formal parameters. So are known as formal parameters. And every formal parameter defined in function is mandatory. That means not optional. So not optional. So it is mandatory. So we have to pass actual value. So whenever you call the function, it requires the arguments. It requires the arguments to be passed. That is the actual value. The arguments to be passed, that is the actual value or actual parameter. So now what we do here is, I am writing here print numbers 5. So, and if I say print numbers 5, and it is printing number, document.write, I will put horizontal line, HR, something. So now you see, first one, it is printing 5 numbers. So, but after printing 5 numbers, let's see the console. So in the console, it is not showing anything because the second one is not printed. Because it is mandatory. So I pass here as some 4 now. Now it can able to print 4 numbers. If I say pass 14, then it can able to print 14 numbers. That means one function is modifying its functionality. And who is responsible for modifying the functionality? So who is modifying the functionality? That means the parameter is modifying the functionality, right? So that means the parameters are required to modify the function. So whenever you call a function, so it requires arguments. So, and this is parameter. So what is advantage is you can use it for different purpose now. You can configure and use for different purpose. So it can have different solution result. For example, that means a function can have multiple parameters. A function can have multiple parameters. That means, suppose, so I will define here count start and count end. I can have multiple parameters. Then I can tell here this I is equal to count start and less than or equal to count end. So count end, count start, count end. That is count start and count end. So count start and count end. This is the approach. So the point is now Now we are expecting two parameters. So 5 to 10 and 14 to 25, like this. That means now it is expecting two parameters and it can handle both of them. It will print from 5 to 10. It will print from 14 to 25. So it is modifying the functionality. It is modifying the functionality. And you can have multiple parameters. There can be more than one parameter. And very important is this is multiple parameter. This is one multiple. You can define anyway. For example, see, we will create here a function. This improves the reusability also. So we define a function. And the function parameter, suppose print product. This function parameter can be any type. So remember, function parameter can be any type. Can be any type. Function parameter can be any type. That means it can be a string, it can be a number, it can be a boolean, it can be a null, it can be undefined, it can be array, it can be object, it can be function, it can be date, any type. A function parameter can be any type. It can be any type, the primitive types or non-primitive types. Many times people ask like, can I have a function in function? Can I have a function as a parameter? You can have. Remember, actually this formal parameter, the formal parameter is just a reference name. That means you can keep anything inside it. Suppose I said ID, I said name, I said price, I said stock. So we are not having any data type specific for them. You can store anything inside ID. You can store anything inside name. You can store anything inside price. There is no certain rule for that. It can be any type, any type. For example, now I am printing document.write. I am printing the details. So here I am adding like ID is equal to whatever ID is passed. So in the next line, so name is equal to, so whatever the name is passed. How you present your wish. So price is equal to, so whatever the price is passed into it. And the stock, so is equal to, we can have an expression like if stock is equal to true. So then ternary operator, I said available. Otherwise, I said out of stock. Like this, we can configure. Now you can see that whenever I want to print product, now this can be used to print different types. So whenever I want to print product, then just I need to access that print product into that ID, comma, name. It is a string type. So it is a string type. Then price, it is a number type. And stock, it is a Boolean type. You can handle any type of value inside it. So I'm writing document.write, so BR. So let's put a break after everything, right? Now you see here, so I am accessing again print product. This time to some Nike casuals. So it has some price. So price and stock is false. It can access all of that. Now when I run this, you can see it is printing the details. So it is printing the details. I put here HR, horizontal line, and it can get that and display. That means we are reusing the function with the different types of functionality, configuring and defining it. Right. That is basically the function with different parameters. A function can have a function parameter. I will show you the point here. This is an example. So a function can have function parameter. A function can have function parameter. Just like I told you, now you will see the correct callback mechanism. Suppose I'm defining a function, verify user. This function is expecting user name, password, and it is expecting success and failure. So the point here is we are writing the condition. If username is equal to John and password is equal to some 1, 2, 3, 4. And if it is matching, then success should execute. It's a function like. Else failure should execute. So else failure should execute like a function. Now you have parameter. So username, password, these are string. And success is a function and failure is a function. Don't think that, remember, formal parameters can have only name. That means you cannot write a function here. You cannot write a function here. It's not possible. So formal is just a reference name, only reference name you can give. Now you see here, now whenever I access the function, so verify user, whenever I access verify user, into that I pass username, so John, comma, I pass password 1, 2, 3. So that's it. I'm just passing these two. And I am telling function what success function should execute. It should print document.write, so login success. So comma, we need another function that is for failure. So document.write, so invalid credentials. Invalid credentials. This we need to define. Invalid credentials, we need to configure that. Now when I access this, you can see, so when we access this, now it is going to display login success or invalid. So that means we are having two functions as parameters. Out of those two functions, which function will execute, that depends on whether it is valid or not. So that depends on whether it is valid or not. So it shows login success. That means if anything is wrong, so then it is going to display invalid. So it is going to display invalid. That is generally when you are dealing as callback. Here we are having callback technique. That means it will call first function if it is success. It will call second function if it is failure. It will decide which one to call. Now you have anonymous functions here, defined here, configured. So that is another example for that. That means how we can have functions as parameters. You can have array as parameter, object as parameter, date as parameter. Depending on your requirement, you can have any type of parameter. You can configure any type of parameter. So for example, you can see, you can have different parameters. Suppose if it is an array parameter, so like function print list, this is expecting collection. This is expecting collection. Now, whenever collection is passed, then we have to print. So we write for var item of collection, and we are printing that. So that means document.write. So we have to print that item plus br like this. Now we created a print list with a collection. Now how we pass array into it? Remember, formal parameters will not have any square braces like that. Remember, formal parameter means only name, nothing else. So then how do we pass an array into it? Generally, whenever we call that print list into that, it is expecting a collection. We can pass anyway. Suppose I can put a square brace. And here I can define, so some electronics, comma, some footwear, so comma, some fashion, like this. This is one technique. And you can see it is able to print those details. So there is another technique. So document.write, so HR, okay. There is another technique. So print list, you can create a new array constructor. Into that, we can pass the values like TV, like some mobile, like this we can pass. That is another technique. You can see that is also allowed. That is also allowed. There is another technique. So document.write HR. There is another technique. Another technique is you can create an array. Suppose footwear. And in that array, you can pass some value, some Nike casuals. So Lee boot, so Lee Cooper boot. And you can call print list, and into that you can pass that footwear, which is a collection. This is also possible. You can directly pass an array. You can pass through array constructor. You can create one array and pass it. So now it is expecting that, and it can print the details. There are various techniques of configuring array as parameter. So this is, so array parameter. Array parameter. You can have an array parameter. So this is an example for array parameter. You can have an object parameter. You can have an object parameter. That means, so you can define like this. Suppose I am configuring now print details. Into this, we are defining an object. So item or say product. Okay. Now this we have to print. So for where property in is used to access the properties in product. For where property in product, document.write, we are printing. So we are printing the property name, and we are printing the product of property. That means we are printing the product of property. That means property name and its value. Now this is an object type, and you know how to pass an object. So I'm calling print details. You can directly use a curly brace. That's how we pass an object. In that we have name. So Samsung TV, like this. We have price. So some price. So we have like stock. So stock, some stock, boolean, like this. Now you can see that. So it is going to access and print the detail here. Let's print BR, line break, after every property. Then it will be better. It will print this. Now you can reuse. Object can be anyway. Directly you can pass an object, or you can do one more thing. So HR, horizontal line. And here we will create a mobile, or say shoe is equal to, it's an object. It contains name as Nike casuals. It contains price, some price. And it contains stock, some true. And it contains more than what previous one is having. It can contain any. Suppose MFD, so is a new date. the manufactured date. So when we are trying to pass so many details, but here we don't have the details to print date. So manufacturer is not there. But no problem, because we are passing, and here we return logic in such a way that it reads every property. For one, we don't have. For another, we have. So, and when you print that, so document.write, or simply we call print details. Into that, we have to pass that shoe object. You can directly create an object, or you can pass an object into it. Now you can see that it is also working fine. It can access and display. So changing the format, displaying in various formats, we already know that approach. We already know that point. But this is the basic we need to understand how to handle. So a function can have any type of parameter. Technically, we can have any type of parameter. So it can be array parameter, object parameter, date parameter, any kind of parameter can be passed into it. Now, different types. And this is an object type parameter. As I told you, so every parameter is mandatory. If due to any reason, if you want to ignore a parameter, for that we have to write logic. You cannot simply ignore the parameter. You have to write the logic. For example, see. So how we can handle undefined parameter. For that we have to write logic. For example, so we have some options here, some options configured here. Suppose print details. In that we have name, we have price, and we have stock. Now we are printing it. So document.write. But for some product, if price is not defined, so then how? So we have to write logic for that. That means, see, we need to write a condition. If price is equal to undefined, that means if price is undefined, then we need to print document.write. We need to print only name is equal to whatever the name is there. And in the next line, we need to print the stock. So is equal to whatever stock is present. If price is not defined. Else, if price is defined, like that, you have to write condition for everyone. If name is defined, do this. If price is defined, do this. So if document.write, a document.write. So now we are configuring here. So name, so is name. In the next line, price is price. So price. In the next line, stock is stock. That's how we have to configure, how we define the option. Now when I access print details, in that I am passing some Samsung TV, okay? And I am passing some price, okay? Then stock is true. That is okay. Now you can see that it is printing the details. If I am not passing the price, then actually you cannot leave empty. You cannot write like this. Remember, if you write like this, the second one will be taken as price. If you are not passing the price, at price place, you have to pass undefined. That's how we have to do. You cannot even put 0. If you put 0, 0 is also a price. You cannot leave empty. If you leave empty, what happens is this true is considered as price. And you can see that it will print that price true and stock undefined. So that order, according to order, the second one is undefined, price is undefined. Then it will not print the price. It will print only name and stock. If the price is not undefined, it is defined with some value, then it will take that value and it will print the value. If not, don't leave it empty. We have to configure undefined. Then it will print that only these two. This is a lengthy process. That is one problem also. That is the reason JavaScript is not a complete OOP language. If it is a OOP language, we can have functions overloaded. Overloading functions allows you to handle this kind of situation. But actually, JavaScript will not support that. JavaScript will not support that. So it has some issues. Directly, it will not support. So a lot of problems. There is no other technique. We have to write like this. Alternatively, you need to configure. Alternatively, you have to define. This is an example of undefined parameter. Now, in the latest version, so in JavaScript, so they introduced a concept called REST parameters. Why? Because now one question can be asked. So how many parameters we can pass, so or we can configure in a function? How many parameters you can configure in a function? That is the question. As per the standards of ECMA script, as per the rules of ECMA standards, function allows, ECMA standards function allows 1024 parameters. 1024 parameters. So using lot of parameters is not like indefinite, right? So like infinity. There is limit for the parameters, and using lot of parameters will cause lot of memory overloading. To overcome that issue, now REST parameters introduced from ES6 and higher version. From ES6 and higher version, we have REST parameters. REST parameter is nothing but, so technically, a single formal parameter can allow multiple actual values. One formal parameter can allow multiple values. So a single formal parameter, can allow multiple actual values. That's what actually the concept. So it is defined. So REST parameter, it is defined. It is defined by using ... and parameter name. That is configured like this. That means you see here, suppose I am writing ... and I given some list like this. And we are performing an iteration for var item of list, because it is having multiple values. Document.write item plus br, line break. Now you see here, I can pass all these values into it. Remember, actually, it is allowing only one parameter. But this ... indicates that it is a REST parameter. Now this ... indicates any number of parameters. Now don't think that 3 dots means 3 parameters, because some of your genius people will ask, sir, 3 dots, 3 parameters, 4 dots, 4 parameters, huh? Right? So for any number of parameters, REST parameter is only 3 dots, dot, 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 even for 2, even for 1, even for 3 or any. So that is dot, dot, dot. That is REST parameter. And there are some rules for REST parameter. When you define REST parameter, what are the rules for REST parameter is, here we are passing, first I will pass here some TV, comma, mobile, comma, some shoe, some watch, like this we are passing. Now actually only one parameter is there, but you are passing multiple values. That is wrong. But if it is a REST parameter, it is okay. If it is not a REST parameter, observe what happens is, here I said Samsung TV. Then what it will do is, it will take only the first value and it will print that first value like this. It will perform iteration on first value. But it have to read all the values up to end. Then we need to configure as dot, dot, dot. That is the REST parameter. Then it can access all of them and print them. That is REST. Now one parameter is enough to handle multiple values. But we have certain rules. The rules are nothing but every function can have only one REST parameter. Another one is REST parameter. You can have other parameters with REST parameter. But REST parameter must be the last parameter in formal list. REST parameter must be the last parameter. For example, so here I have count. Now I return count. I am passing the count at the end, 10. So like that, simple. Now you observe here. So it shows an error. You see the console. It shows an error. Says that REST parameter must be last formal parameter. REST parameter must be last formal parameter. Yeah, that means this is the rule. So you can keep count, but it should be before that. That means count. And you can have only one REST parameter. There cannot be another. Now this count you have to print here. So at the beginning 10, that is the count. Of course, for that you can print the value. So count or title, something. So you can have any another parameter. The title is suppose products. And I am printing that here. So that means I am configuring that. So document.write. So the title is printed here. So, but observe carefully when you are configuring this and you are accessing that, you see this is the products and these are all other parameters. So this is, you can have any type. I have some count. So I return here. So some count. So count. I defined some like count is equal to some count. It's a number. So it's a number. Then I have to pass a number here, some 10. And you can see you can have any type of parameter. But it must be before the REST parameter. You cannot have any parameter after the REST parameter. So REST parameter must be the last in the formal parameter list. That is the rule for the REST parameters. REST parameter. So this is how we can configure the parameters. Now we have some more important, like functions have recursion, function closures, function closures, function recursions. So we have arrow functions that we call as lambda functions. So how we can handle that? That we will see in our next session. Tomorrow we will see that. Okay. Tomorrow we can finish the functions concept. Then we can go into OOP now, right? Recursions, closures, arrow functions we have to learn in the next session. Tomorrow we will discuss about them. Okay.